Tonight at midnight, America puts an end to 3 decades of deficits and launches a new era of balanced budgets and surpluses. While the numbers will not be official until the end of the month, we expect the 1998 surplus to be about $70 billion.
President Bill Clinton, September 30th, 1998, the beginning of the 1999 federal government fiscal year, and talking about something you may have never heard a president talk about, and maybe thought you'd never hear a president talk about. It was a budget surplus. Ever wonder what it sounds like when the government has more money than it spends, and then politicians come up with ideas for how to spend that extra money, and then those ideas lead to angry arguments about how to spend that money? Arguments that kind of sound like what we hear now, but in reverse? Then this episode of C-SPAN's podcast, The Weekly, is just the thing for you, because that's exactly what you'll hear. No, these aren't fake AI-generated hallucinations. Yes, it really did happen. Actual real politicians saying real things about a real budget surplus. The year was 1999, a year politicians fought over not how to cut the deficit and debt, but how to spend the surplus. In 1999, politicians from both parties talked about budget surplus and argued budget surplus. And in this podcast, we're going to march straight through 1999 in chronological order, starting with President Clinton's State of the Union address, January 19th, 1999.
For the first time in 3 decades, the budget is balanced. From a deficit of $290 billion in 1992, we had a surplus of $70 billion last year, and now we are on course for budget surpluses for the next 25 years.
Here is President Clinton again, February 1st, 1999, announcing his budget plan for fiscal year 2000.
As I said in the State of the Union, America is on course for surpluses over the next quarter century. And our estimates, optimistic as they sound, are more conservative than those of Congress. Our economic house is in order and strong. If we manage the surplus right, we can uphold our responsibility to future generations. We can do so by dedicating the lion's share of the surplus to saving Social Security and Medicare and paying down the national debt.
Now a Republican, February 13th, 1999, giving his party's radio address, here's then Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott.
By now, every American knows that the federal government expects to run up a budget surplus for the next several years. You should also know that the president wants to keep that surplus in Washington, and he wants to spend much of it. He did propose to set aside part of the surplus to protect Social Security. And you know what? We agree with him. Dollar for dollar, most of that surplus should be devoted to saving and strengthening the Social Security system. You worked for your Social Security, you pay for it, you own it, it's yours. But what about the rest of the surplus? The same thing is true. You worked for it. You paid for it in your taxes. It's yours, and the president and the Congress should leave it alone. We should return it to you in the form of lower taxes. That makes sense everywhere in the country, except in the White House.
Now another congressional Republican leader, this time from the House. March 25th, 1999, addressing the full chamber, here is Budget Committee Chairman John Kasich.
And now, rather than having deficits as far as the eye could see, we have surpluses as far as the eye can see, and we want to use those surpluses to do several things. Things that we never thought were possible in 1995 when we won the majority. For the first time, we're going to keep our myths off the money that we collect from Social Security and Medicare. Politicians had only been talking about it. Frankly, there were some on the other side of the aisle that said that we ought to move it off budget, and I've paid tribute to them. But you know what? We've been able to be intellectually honest, to take the money from Social Security, the payroll taxes, and lock it up and keep our fingers off of it. And in the meantime, we're going to pay down some of the national debt. Many of you who've served here for 25 years, did you ever think not only would we have a balanced budget, would we begin to reduce the publicly held debt last year by $50 billion?
Now, back to President Clinton, June 28th, 1999.
If you look at this chart, you will see that we have now cut up Washington's credit card. Now we can pay off the debt. By 2015, this country can be entirely out of debt. This is a remarkable milestone, but it is clearly within reach. If we do not squander the surplus by choosing short-term gain over long-term national goals. The surplus is the hard-earned product of our fiscal discipline. We should use it to prepare for the great challenges facing our country, caring for our parents, caring for our children, freeing our nations from the shackles of debt so that we can have long-term, sustained economic prosperity.
That same day at the White House, with the same chart President Clinton used, here's Clinton administration budget director and future Obama administration Secretary of the Treasury, Jack Lew.
For the fiscal year that we're in now, fiscal 99, we're projecting a $99 billion surplus. Looking ahead to next year, we're estimating a unified surplus of $142 billion. And for the first time, we have an on-budget surplus of $5 billion. I think one has to look over 5, 10, and 15 years to really understand what this chart is all about and what gives us the opportunity to put forward the program that we're announcing today. If you look over the 15-year period, we're talking about a total of unified surpluses of $5.9 trillion. We're talking in 10 years about $2.9 trillion. Over the next 10 years, we're talking about an on-budget surplus of $1.083 trillion. This is an increase from our February budget of $333 billion.
The next month, on July 17, 1999, President Clinton gives a radio address focused on the surplus.
I want to talk to you today about a great debate now underway in Washington, a debate over how best to use America's record-breaking budget surpluses. That we can even have this debate is remarkable. Just remember 6.5 years ago, when I first became president, we faced budget deficits that were $290 billion and rising. In the previous 12 years, those deficits had quadrupled the total debt of America. But beginning in 1993, we put in place a new economic strategy of fiscal discipline, coupled with greater investments in areas like education, training, and technology. That strategy has helped to produce a private sector-led economic expansion of historic proportions. It's also produced not only a balanced budget, but budget surpluses of $99 billion this year and a projected surplus over the next 10 years of about $2.9 trillion, including Social Security taxes. Now, America must decide how best to use the fruits of our hard work. I believe we should stay with the fiscal discipline that got us here and invest the surplus to meet our long-term challenges. That's why I propose that we set aside the vast bulk of this surplus to protect and secure Social Security and Medicare.
5 days later, July 22, 1999, here's Republican House Speaker Dennis Hastert.
We have the largest surplus in history, and the Democrat substitute raises taxes by $4 billion. Now, we have to give our friends on the other side of the aisles credit. They remain committed to larger government and bigger spending. What we have here is a basic difference in philosophy, a philosophical difference. We can do what the Democrats want. They want to spend more of the surplus, including a portion of the Social Security surplus, on more Washington bureaucratic programs. They believe that more Washington spending is responsible. The President has said that giving this money back to American people is risky because he doesn't know how the American people will spend their own money. I think the President is wrong. It's not risky to give the American people back the very money that they've earned.
Here's Speaker Hastert again the next month, a rally on August 5, 1999, the day the House voted on a tax cut.
This is a tax relief package that is responsible because it's money out of Washington and back into the hands of the American people, so the American people can decide how to spend their hard-earned dollars and not the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. You know, it would be irresponsible to to leave the whole $3 trillion surplus here in Washington. And I'll tell you something about this town. When you leave money in this town and you put money on the table, people find a way to spend it. What we do in this tax bill is something very, very important. For every $4 of the surplus, 3 of those dollars go to debt reduction. $1 goes back to the American people so that they can put it in their pocket.
Now we hear from a candidate running in the next presidential election. From September 15th, 1999, here is Vice President Al Gore.
This big surplus that has been built up is the object of a tremendous debate. One side says, let's just blow it all on a risky tax scheme that would put us right back into deficits again and take away our chance to save Social Security, protect Medicare, fix it, add a prescription drug benefit for seniors. That's what I think we ought to do with that surplus. Then pay down the debt, keep interest rates low.
Back to President Clinton, October 14th, 1999, a press conference 2 weeks after the beginning of the 2000 fiscal year.
I would veto a bill that I thought, here at the moment of our greatest prosperity, when we've got a surplus, if they wanted to cut education and gut our efforts to put more teachers in the schools, our efforts to give kids after-school programs, our efforts to do all the things we're trying to do in education, to hook up their computers to the schools by 2000, the internet, all the classrooms, the internet by 2000. All these things we're trying to do, would I veto that? I would. I would have to do that. I would have no choice. It would be unconscionable to think that America, at its moment of greatest prosperity, when we got our first surplus in 30 years, is out there cutting education and several other areas.
And one final clip from President Clinton, October 27th, 1999, the day the Treasury Department and the Office of Management and Budget released the final official budget numbers for fiscal year 1999.
It is now official, and I'm proud to announce that we posted a budget surplus of $123 billion, the largest surplus in American history. And in the last 2 years alone, we have paid down our nation's debt by $140 billion, the largest debt reduction in our nation's history. We have closed the book on deficits and opened the door on a new era of economic opportunity.
We'll close out 1999 with another presidential candidate. 2 weeks before New Year's Eve, campaigning in Charleston, South Carolina, on December 14th, 1999, here's Republican Senator from Arizona, John McCain.
Rather than rallying to reform these programs to assure their long-term financial health, Congress and the administration do what we do best. We point fingers and play politics. We feed the American people's growing cynicism by treating these programs as props in partisan political theater. Our tug of war over the surplus is a good example. Democrats want to spend the surplus on bigger government. Republicans claim it all for tax cuts. Each party cynically strikes its best pose to appeal to favored constituencies. Meanwhile, we lose the precious time and resources necessary to save Social Security and Medicare.
And now, a bonus clip. And for that, we'll bust out of 1999. Let's hear the next president talk about a surplus. February 27th, 2001, making his first address to Congress as president, here's George W. Bush.
I hope you'll join me in standing firmly on the side of the people. See, the growing surplus exists because taxes are too high and government is charging more than it needs. The people of America have been overcharged, and on their behalf, I'm here asking for a refund.
How does the story turn out? Well, you probably know the current numbers. In 2025, the U.S. federal government has a budget deficit of $1.36 trillion. The current total U.S. national debt is $36.63 trillion. Missed the surplus days of 1999? Then let's end by offering comfort and borrow lyrics from the artist formerly known as Prince. Say, 2000, party over, oops, out of time. So tonight we're going to party like it's fiscal year 1999. And how do we party? Here at C-SPAN Radio, we party by searching the C-SPAN video library. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening and happy searching.